Our first speaker is Sam Cooper, who is from St. Roberts, so we're excited to have Sam with us. He and his wife, Paula, are here tonight. They do a lot of Bible studies here at St. Roberts, and they're very, very involved. And Sam and Paula have 4 children, and Sam's going to talk to you about his battles with cancer, that thy will be done. So welcome, Sam. Here's your clicker.
Am I clicking on something?
Oh,
I don't have anything to click on. All right, I don't click anything. Thanks, Debbie. Thanks, Debbie. Good evening. Before I begin, I want to thank Teresa and Jeff Kopatz for A Night of Hope. We've been coming to this event since 2015. We know this to be a night of inspiration, and it takes a lot of work to put on an event like this. This truly is a special evening. Thank you, Teresa, Jeff, and your many helpers for all your hard work in putting on this event year after year. My name is Sam Cooper. My wife Paula and I are parishioners here at St. Roberts. We have been blessed with 4 adult children and 2 grandchildren, all of whom are healthy. We are fortunate to have found a faith community and good friends to pray with and for. We joined St. Roberts in 2003, shortly before our story begins. We're certain that it was God's plan to put us in the midst of wonderful friends and support to be there for us when we would need them. Our story is one of hope, prayer, and a deepening faith. Twice I've been diagnosed with cancer. Both cancers have been very different and a struggle in their own way. God's powerful love pulled us through and calls us to share our story with others. I am here tonight to share God's great gifts of prayer, love, and hope, or as we say in our house, the gift of cancer. I don't want to spoil the ending, but I do survive. Here's my story. In May of 2013, I turned 44. Our oldest was just graduating from high school and getting ready to attend the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. Our youngest was finishing 6th grade and getting ready to move on to the middle school. Our other 2 were in high school. We were looking forward to a fun summer together, especially our family vacation in August. With our 4 kids getting older, Paul and I wondered if it might not be one of the last family vacations we'd all have together. In early September, shortly before our return home from vacation, I had my annual physical. I was feeling great, and I told my doctor just that. September 11th, 2003, I was diagnosed with my first cancer. I received a call at work after my physical that I needed to go straight to the hospital. When pressed, the doctor told me I had CML. I didn't even know what that was. When asked, he told me, "Sam, you have leukemia." What a shock. During my week-long hospital stay, we learned many things, including that the only cure for CML would be a bone marrow transplant. The search was on to find a suitable donor match. My siblings were tested, and the National Bone Marrow Registry was checked. I had no match. Family and friends asked what they could do. We held a bone marrow donor drive right here in this room. That day we signed up over 200 new potential donors, but to no avail. I still had no match. Without a match, my doctors had given me a 3 to 5 year survival prognosis. I'd been given a death sentence. I needed to talk to my priest. I called Father Don Shane at St. Roberts, and he had me come right in to visit with him. When I arrived in the office, he came out to greet me and took me over to the church. We were in the old church before the remodel. Father Shane took me in the back to sit with Mary. He told me we were going to pray together. I received the sacrament of the sick. He asked Mary to take care of me. Father told me our mother always looks out for her children. 6 years earlier, I'd lost my own mother. How was it that it never occurred to me to turn to Mary before that moment? Father was right. I needed a mother. I was scared. At that time, I could have turned away from my faith. Father Shane found just the right way to turn me towards my faith. Now there was hope. It's what we all needed. We turned towards the church. We felt at peace here. We leaned on our faith. We had a new focus. We asked our friends for prayers. We immersed ourselves in our faith community. We weren't as alone anymore. We had prayer, love, and hope. Earlier that summer, a new drug came out of clinical trials, Gleevec. It showed promise, but it was too early to know much about it. However, it was working well enough that it was already the first-line treatment for CML. I started on the drug a few weeks later. Gleevec's an oral chemo. There were side effects. It was a little rough at first. It was so new that they weren't sure of the dosing, the side effects, or how to manage them. I was going in for monthly doctor visits, had numerous sick days from work, and many of our social outings were either canceled or cut short. Now, if you know me, you know I truly am an optimistic guy. I had been told I would survive 3 to 5 years. I chose to hear 5 years. Actually, 5 years and 2 months. I planned on Paul and I spending our 10-year wedding anniversary together. It was my goal, but I couldn't see anything past that. When you're 44, you don't normally think about dying. But I had an expiration date, and the clock was ticking. It changes how you think, how you see the world. 1,800 days left. What were we going to do with that time? What's important? What's not? We never thought about if I would survive leukemia. We just thought about how long I would live. We prayed together. We prayed for God's grace. Paula would always tell me that her prayer was that she could accept God's will. She would whisper, "Thy will be done." 3 years later, Gleevec was proving very promising with even better than expected results. They'd figured out the dosing, they were managing the side effects, and now they were talking about longer survival. But I was on a high wire without a safety net. There was a certain percent of patients who became intolerant to Gleevec. The drug just stopped working for some. There were no options then. The disease would progress quickly if you didn't have a donor match. If that happened, we knew we would have about 9 months. Prayers for grace were still our plea, as we never knew what each day would bring, especially leading up to the quarterly bone marrow biopsies and the agonizing wait for lab results to tell us if the drug was still working or not. At the 5-year mark, they were developing second and third generation drugs. Now there was a safety net. If I failed on Gleevec, at least there were other options. Now we could start planning a future. There was more hope than we'd had in years. God is great. For years, we did not expect that we would celebrate my 50th birthday. Now it's 2009, 6 years into the journey, and I'm in a deep remission. Our youngest is graduating from high school. The oldest is still in college. And we're celebrating my 50th birthday with a bash. It was bigger than our wedding and a lot like a wedding. We celebrated with a special mass here at St. Robert's with Father Shane, our family, and our faith community. Then we really celebrated with food, drink, music, and dancing. Lots of each. I still had leukemia, but now we were talking about 10 or even 20-year survival. We could breathe deeper. God truly is great. 18 months later, I was put on an antibiotic for a persistent cough. After several doctor's visits and a cold that just would not go away, finally a chest x-ray was ordered. Later that day, another call from the doctor's office. I needed to come right in. There was a spot on my lung. March 3rd, 2011, I went in for scans. They revealed a grapefruit-sized mass wrapped around my aorta and several spots on both my lungs. What could it be? Was it the leukemia, lung cancer, or something else? Once again, I went to visit Father Shane. It happened to be on the morning they told me they suspected I had stage 4 lung cancer. I would be going in that afternoon for lung biopsies. Again, Father took me to the church. This time it was the new church, onto the altar and to the tabernacle. He told me we were going to pray together again. This time he had a new intercessor. John Paul II was up for canonization. Father told me he was going to be a saint, and in order to become a saint, he was going to perform miracles. And there was no reason I should not receive a healing miracle from him. That was what we were going to pray for. Each of us with one hand on the tabernacle and the other holding each other's, we prayed for a miracle. Through many biopsies and weeks of various tests, I was finally diagnosed with stage 4 testicular cancer, the second of my two very different cancers. It had been hard to diagnose because guys in their 50s don't get testicular cancer. It occurs mainly with men in their 20s, sometimes in their teens, and occasionally in their 30s. Testicular cancer is a very fast-growing and spreading type of cancer. It's also very treatable if caught early. Unfortunately, mine was not caught early. To add to the complexity of the tumor, the tumor wrapped around my aorta would need to be completely dead before it could be removed. The plan was for me to receive aggressive chemo treatments and then surgery to follow. My doctor told me she would not let the cancer kill me, but she couldn't promise that I would survive the treatment. That was up to me. We needed prayers. Our prayer warriors were called. I asked them to come to the house. I needed them. People showed up bringing food, drink, and love. Somehow the evening turned into a celebration. We were laughing, crying, telling stories. Paula admonished me for throwing a cancer party. I told her I needed our friends and family around me. I asked her to do one other thing for me. I asked her to set up a CaringBridge site. She initially refused. Nobody survives who has a site, she said. We both needed the support. She just didn't realize how much she needed it. The CaringBridge site was perfect. It was exactly what we needed. Paula would post regularly. It was therapeutic for her, and she didn't have to make 100 phone calls if she didn't want to, although sometimes she wanted to. One night, when things were going badly for me, I said to Paula, "It's the weirdest thing. I think I can feel people praying for me." She smiled and said that earlier that evening she'd posted on the CaringBridge asking for prayers. She then read me people's comments from the site. It became a nightly ritual for Paula to read me comments from the CaringBridge and cards we'd received in the mail. Some nights this would go on for over an hour. Those prayers lifted us up and carried us through. I had started a very rigorous course of chemotherapy. 3-week cycles, each round consisted of 5 8-hour days of chemo, followed by 16 days to regain my strength. Initially, I was scheduled for 4 rounds of chemo, and then surgery after the 4th round to remove the tumor wrapped around my aorta. I was to receive 52 doses of platinum chemo over 10 weeks. I used a deck of cards to track my progress, tearing a card in half after receiving each dose. More than 90% of the time, that much chemo killed the cancer and allowed the surgeon to remove benign tumors. Unfortunately, at the end of 4 rounds, my cancer had survived. After consultation, the decision was made to add 2 more rounds of even more aggressive chemo, 28 more doses. During the last 2 rounds, I was scheduled to be inpatient during the 5 days of receiving chemo and then home to recover for 16 days. I was very weak. The doctor was right. It wasn't the cancer that would kill me. The treatment was doing that. No hair, no appetite, no energy, hardly any white blood cells to fight off infection. I was sent home after round 5 to prepare for my final round. Left home for only a few hours at a time, one morning leaving the bedroom, I found myself without the strength to make it to the living room couch, a mere 25 feet. Laying on the hallway floor, feeling very alone, I heard a voice. I knew right away God was talking to me. I wasn't alone. God simply told me that I would be all right. I knew what that meant. 1 of 2 things were going to happen, but either way I would be all right. He would help me up, or he would help me die. I felt his peace. I knew that I had to make it through that day. I didn't want Paula to come home and find me there on the floor. God helped me up into my couch. At that point, I knew that no matter what happened, I would be fine. God was with me. We finished the 6th round, still having some question whether or not the chemo had worked. The doctors prepped me for surgery to remove the hopefully dead tumors that had occupied my body. The surgery lasted for more than 10 hours. Upon waking from the surgery, they told me they think they got it all. Then the long road of healing began. The next 2 years had serious ups and downs. 80 doses of chemo take their toll, and they create other health problems. We still deal with post-chemo issues, but now we know why I had those 2 cancers. In vitro and as a baby, I was exposed to a contaminated water supply that had astronomically high levels of carcinogens. I'd be lying if I told you we don't live with fear. We do. When I cough, Paula assumes it's lung cancer. We don't know what the future will hold for us, but we do know we're not alone. God is with us. Our families are with us. You're with us. And many people still pray for us each day. The power of prayer is amazing. Sometimes I can still feel it. Our story is not so much about cancer as it is about the hope that was never lost, the power of prayer, and acts of love and kindness, a deepening faith. God was and continues to be very present along our journey of accepting and trusting thy will be done. Postscript, the oldest, Sam, not only finished college but also law school, as did his brother Jason. The other 2 are also happily working their chosen professions. Our daughter Sarah in food service, and our youngest Matthew is an Omaha police officer, giving Paula something else to worry about. We enjoy all 4 of them, our grandchildren, Sam and Jim, our daughter-in-law, Kate, and the other special people they have brought into our lives. We still do family vacation together, and they continue to lift us and inspire us. Paula and I recently celebrated our 20-year anniversary together, and now when I look into the future, I see us celebrating our 50th. Thank you, honey. You're the reason I'm alive today. You cared for me and you loved me back to health. I owe you my life, and I love you. Oh, there's one more thing you should know. Apparently, 80 doses of aggressive chemo not only rids you of testicular cancer, but can cure you of leukemia. I've tested negative for both cancers for the past 7 years now. Thank you, and God bless you.